So this is the agenda for today's session. Um, we are going to cover like this module has all these like items, including the integration architecture overview, workday connectors, integration building blocks, core connector, uh, how we can launch an integration system, how we can change the detection, how we can view the transaction log and what information it provides, and then the sequence generators. So in today's session, we are going to cover a part of it, and then we'll continue with uh, rest of the things in our next week's session. So before we go into the detail of the architecture, we need to understand that that how users are actually like what's the overall architecture, how we are when we are using Workday, how like we are getting connected with Workday or any other system, and then how we are actually using different services of Workday. So if we look at this specific diagram, uh, considering that we are a user, and uh, we are basically accessing Workday through internet browser. So for example, we are using Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari, any browser. So we as a user are interacting with like are browsing Workday site, so we are the users. Then just like common users, there can be systems as well. So for example, in our last session, we were talking about EIBs. So you know what's the purpose and why it's important to understand this whole structure or architecture, because we need to understand that how different applications and how this whole system actually working at back end. So in order to in order to use any system, there are different things, there are different objects that are combined and giving us uh, like an overall system. So uh, and it's important to understand the architecture, so we know that how there are involvement of different services, and then uh, why it's important, how we are actually combining different application or integrate doing the integrations. So these systems, so for example, these systems can be any third party tool as well. But what we are doing, so let's say if we are user, we are accessing Workday using internet browser, and we are actually using it through internet. So there are uh, there are different components of like architecture, Workday architecture. So if we see the UI server, so what UI server is, it's like you can simply say that um, it's an entry point for end users. So it's an entry point. So let's say when you browse the Workday website, there is a certain UI, and UI means user interface, what you can see on the screen. So let's say if you are trying to browse Workday through iPhone, so it will automatically generate UI for iPhone. It can be mobile, it can be any flash or flex based UI, but the point is that it is actually connecting us to a UI server, which is an entry point for end user. Then we have these integration servers. So what's the purpose of these integration servers? So basically Workday is using these integration servers to talk to the outside world via web services. So uh, if you remember, we talked about SOAP services and REST services. So if Workday is heavily into like using SOAP, which is simple object access protocol, and this integration server actually translate SOAP into whatever else we might be needing for integration. So remember in yesterday's session we talked about three elements where we are uh, like we are extracting the data, we are transforming, and then delivering that data. So Workday actually sees integration among different services and as an area needing like significant future attention. So it actually provide transformation services according to the data formats that it is integrating with. So this is basically, you can call it a communication channel, and there are different services and different servers involved in that whole architecture. It's important to understand this because then we would be able to understand the concept of integration. So now what the object management server. So all the main processing is actually done in this object management server, which is, you can say, the main processing engine. Services, UI, and data requests that come from these two servers. Basically, uh, these are getting processed in this object management server. And then we have this persistent store. So all the application changes are actually captured in this database. So uh, all the data replications and data backups, these are all taken care over here in the storage. But certain, like for example, if we go back to uh, like whenever we run an EIB, for example, so there is a, and if if it generates any error, then it will generate a report and we have to download that report. So that is something which is not getting stored here, but we have to store that on our machine. But generally speaking, uh, like it is, there is a database behind, and this persistent store is actually like the changes that are happening behind, those changes are getting stored over here. So this is the overall structure of Workday. Now, what we are doing, what's the purpose, why we are trying to understand this? We need to know the communication channel, that uh, how things are happening at the back end. And again, the purpose of integration, or the purpose of studying this core connector is that we need to understand that how we can link, how we can develop a link between maybe two tools, or how we can actually come up with the way of communication between two applications, for example. So core connectors, specifically talking about like um, we talked about inbound and outbound. So in our last session, we learned the outbound integration and inbound integration. And in outbound, we actually learned about report based integration, custom report. So we created a custom report, and then we enabled that report as a web service, and then we created that outbound integration. What was the purpose? And the outbound integration was, the purpose was that we are actually sending the data from Workday to any external, that can be an email, that can also be any shared shared location or file server, where we are sending that uh, specific data. So that was about like doing it through a report only. Now, in today's session, we are going to learn about one step ahead, and which is that we are basically learning a different way of integration, and that is that we can see that through connectors. So what connectors are? So connectors are pre-built integration templates that extend Workday's functionality to external systems for HCM, payroll interface, financial management, and spend management. All integrations are hosted and maintained by Workday. Rapid deployment while ensuring external systems only the data you want to expose. So what we are doing is, and what Workday connectors are. So Workday connectors are pre-built format. So what Workday has done, Workday has actually uh, like built certain templates, and the purpose is integration. So for example, I am using a third party payroll, that can be ADP or that can be any other uh, payroll vendor, and my master set of record is Workday, which means that I am going to rely that whatever changes are happening in my data, my my team is actually my team is actually pushing, updating that data in Workday. And in order to run the payroll, for example, I want that every month that data should be pushed from Workday to my payroll application. So I need to build that connection, that how the data will flow. So in simple words, if we try to understand a mechanism in just from layman's perspective, so let's say there is a location which is, for example, um, your home, and then you need uh, to send something to another location. Let's say consider it as your workplace. So there is a communication, or there is a mechanism that you need to have. What that mechanism would include, so there must be something, for example, that you're sending from home to office. There must be some way of going from your home to office, which means that there must be some travel arrangement. So that's what basically we are doing, that we have 2 points, and those 2 points are actually two applications. One is Workday and one is the other one, and we are basically building a mechanism to send that data from one location to another location. And in this case, we are doing that from uh, from Workday to another system. So you can consider that Workday uh, is your home location, and the data that you are trying to send to another location, and that other location is a payroll system. Now, whatever you will whatever you will take from your home, you will actually deliver it to your office, for example. So that's what, in simple word, that's what we are trying to do. Now, what Workday has done, so Workday has developed integration templates, like pre-built, which means we don't need to do a lot of like programming, and these are pre-designed already available templates, and those are designed with some uh, known known systems or known applications. So let's say ADP, there might be some other tools as well, and we'll see that as well. So there are um these are pre-designed already available, but we have to configure those per our requirement, because uh, every organization has certain unique elements or certain unique structure, and based on that, that organization wants to configure those templates. So Workday provides pre-built connectors for various target systems. End-to-end connectors support a specific named third-party application or service. When a connector is displayed, the specific business functions between the two systems are configured with no additional coding required. Connectors are pre-built integration that address the majority of the integrations effort required to connect to third-party endpoints. So if we just for a minute, if we go back to that diagram that we were looking at. So again, there are like the endpoint. This was the endpoint for end users, and this is, you can say, these integration server. These are the entry point for data request, and this integration server has the transformation capabilities. And this persistent store, this is actually capturing all application changes, replications, and backups. And this actually, this is a processing engine. So what connectors are doing, connectors are actually pre-built integrations. The coding part is already done, and all we need is, we need to like do the configuration and testing. Each customer may have specific mapping requirements and different endpoints configurations. The differences in customer configurations can be accommodated with Workday's integration templates and mapping capabilities. So there are connectors available for benefits, for HCM, payroll, third-party payroll. So Workday also has its payroll system, but a lot of companies use other payroll vendors as well, because maybe Workday payroll might not be uh, might not have some countries specific details, maybe taxation requirement. So there is a possibility that a company might be using some third party payroll. So for number of payroll vendors, Workday also provide connectors for uh, like for that third party payroll. There are connectors for financials as well, spend management, and student. So the design pattern is useful when you require change detection. However, a Workday connector can also be used to produce a full file output. So the transaction log can be leveraged to filter down to relevant results. Reasonable if only a restricted number of field overrides are required. Avoid override that use calculated field prompts. Delivery service supports the file delivery requirement. Core connecting will let you specify which data elements to include in integration output files. So what we are doing here, let's say, so first of all, let's say what we are doing. So let's say we have ADP. What we are doing, we are sending the data from Workday to ADP. Now there can be multiple fields, and here we are talking about the mapping things. So for example, uh, there can be a name, uh, let's say name, there can be an address, there can be any other thing. So these are the fields. And how basically what these core connectors are doing. These are linking Workday fields to the other tools field. So for example, in this case, ADP, let's say we have address, for example. So this is actually providing us the mapping. So we have to make sure, and that's why we are saying that we need to ensure that uh, what we are doing here, how we need to do the mapping. Not necessary that there might be 500 fields, 300 fields in the workday, and in our ADP we are not utilizing so many fields. Maybe we are using those fields differently, so we need to build up that connection. And there and that's where that um, you can say that integration parts, or what you will call that mapping part, will uh, comes in. So this is what we need to understand here, that we have to do certain so we have to make certain changes, but most part is already done, because we Workday has already provided us those connectors, or those pre-built connectors, and all we are looking to do is that make we need to configure it, and then we need to test it, that our fields are getting synced in both applications. One thing that I would like to um, show you as well, just give me 1 minute and let me open up. Okay. So let's just, let's continue with the theory part, and maybe we can go with the practical things in the next session, or I'll try after a couple of minutes. If it's working, then we'll see that. So uh, okay, connector building block. So an integration template is a collection of integration services that enables communication between Workday and an external system. So as I mentioned that uh, these are the pre-built templates, these connectors, and these templates are basically a connection of integration services, and that's facilitating or enabling the communication between Workday and an external system. And that external system could be any SAP application, could be ADP, uh, could be any application. Because what we are trying to do is, our intention is to build that connection, build that communication between two systems. Workday provides integration templates in categories such as benefits, financials, HCM, payroll interface, procurement, recruiting, security, and settlement. Many of the delivered templates contain default values for attributes as well as prompt values for attributes, and map to define the integration further. What So integration service, what does integration service include? So it contains a set of attributes and maps related to a specific integration function. So in the architecture where we were discussing about different services, so integration services is using a format the same way we have uh, there are different formats for integration. It's XSLT, and it actually convert it to Workday understandable format. Basically, there is you can say there is a language that is understandable by different systems. The same way, let's say I understand, for example, I have a different language and you have a different language. So there must be, if we don't, there are two options. Either we actually we have an interpreter, or we are building we are building a mechanism where we can uh, like we should have a mechanism where one system can understand the language of another system. So That's why we are, like, you can say that these are the transformation, this is the transformation language, and integration service is actually using that language to convert that into uh, a Workday XML format that is readable by that external system. Integration service focus on functional areas such as account provisioning or health insurance, as well as integration behavior. So let's say I want to, if you remember in EIB session, we also talk about that document retention, that for how many days that document should be retained. If we want, let's say that we want to override the recent file with uh, like the previous file with the recent file, how we want that file to be delivered. So these are the different behaviors or different things that we need to specify. Then there are different attributes. So there are different components that specify the value of a data element in Workday. So let's say there is a core connector worker template that provides attributes to define address types, benefit plan names, pay rate types, country code names. In addition, there are general attributes to control behavior, such as including prior values that may need to be changed occasionally. To modify attributes for an integration, navigate to the related action integration system. I'll just quickly give it one more try so that uh, these things make more sense and we can understand and do the practical as well. Just unfortunately, it's not working. I'll just do a little bit like a recap so that we can build the context. So the main purpose why we are doing all this is to build the connectivity, the integrate. We are actually building a channel, a way where two systems can actually, you can say, talk to each other. And we are doing it because the purpose of doing integrations is to save the time, and we don't have to like um we don't have to repeatedly doing the same things, and when all our systems are integrated, then our overall functions are more, you can say, more um, more efficient, and we don't have to like spend too much time on controlling it through different tools. So we are building a mechanism where we can allow different systems to communicate to each other, and in doing that, even if we need to um, like send the data from one system to another, we can do that as well. It can be there can be some documents as well, there can be other fields as well, but the idea is that uh, we can link the two or more tools. And for certain tool, whether it's, as I mentioned, that if for example it's SAP, ADP or other tools, so it can allow us to integrate. Of course, even if core Workday has not delivered these pre-built these pre-built templates are not available, we can build our own as well. But for the most common ones, or I would say for a number of these tools, Workday has already delivered it, and we can use those existing templates to um and we can basically configure those existing templates and allow those systems to communicate with each other. So depending on the requirement, um, we need uh, different attributes. So for example, uh, as we mentioned, that we need an incremental change in something, we are going to define that while configuring the integration. For example, we need a complete date and a specific format, for example. So we can define such things there. What let's say we want to um, add location, to which level we want to do that. So it will allow us to specify such details. We field attributes enable you to configure the contents of an integration output file field by field. Select which fields to include in the integration, is specify whether the fields are required, and specify maximum field length. Workday searches for changes to the selected fields, validate required fields are in the output file, truncates value that exceed the maximum length, and reports any errors in the audit files. So for example, let's say um, you have defined the length of a specific field. Let's say maximum length is 15 that we have defined in the integration, and when we run that, for example, the output file, when the integration run, so the output file checks that, because we specified there that this particular field's length should not exceed 15. And for example, when the integration was executed, the system checked the field length, and the field length was 18, for example. So it when uh, the integration process will complete, it will generate an error. And when it will generate an error, we can go to the audit file and see that what caused the error, because I was actually trying to open that for the same reason, that we can take a look that how these audit files look like, and how we can actually uh, learn to understand that what does that error mean and what we need to fix. So for example, if let's say we found that the length of that field was like the condition that we defined, like the length that we specified there, the output file is actually giving us error because the our maximum uh, like length was exceeding. So what we can do, we can modify field attributes for that integration. We can go to the related action uh, in that integration system, and then we can configure integration field attributes. Before building an integration with the core connector, familiarize yourself with each data section to understand which fields are available for output and how the configuration options affect integration behavior. For more information on data sections, navigate to the following documentation sections. So, core connector worker integration data section. So what we are doing, we have to, first of all, we have to pick the attributes. We have to define the attributes, that these are the field that we want to integrate, to be used in the integration. So um, let's say we have let's say 10 fields uh, in Workday, from where we are picking the data, and then we are sending those 10 fields data to the other system. There will be some specific ID. So let's say employee ID, or maybe we created a custom field in Workday for anything. Uh, let's say, for example, let's say commission. So commission is one field that we have created, and every month that commission is, the value of that commission is different. But the field that we have created is that one commission field. There must be, we are calling it commission field because we have given it the name commission, and we know that there is a certain calculation that is being run at the back end, because that's the formula that we made. But Workday doesn't understand that what does commission is. For Workday, it's just a collection of few letters, and that's the field. Now at the back end, Workday has actually allocated a specific ID to that specific field. So for example, let's say uh, we all have um, we all have a specific name. Let's say Jagruti has, there can be 10 other people having the same name, but there is a unique ID that can be your national ID, that can be your social security number, that can be your passport ID, and all these IDs are unique in nature. So similarly, one thing is that each individual has a certain ID, so Workday is actually understanding from that unique ID. Similarly, the fields that are created in Workday, there are certain IDs, or there is a certain code that Workday is generated at the back end, which is actually used for these communications between different systems. Even if we are using EIBs, sometimes, let's say, if we want to execute, let's say, performance review using EIB, and we are running that process in bulk. I have 1,000 employees, and I want to initiate the performance review process for all of them. There is a certain template that I have created, and that template has a certain ID. So I would not use the template name, but I would use the backend ID, and that would help Workday to pick that specific process, and then based on that, it will run that process. So the idea is that we need to understand the mechanism. So there is a unique idea, or there is some code that Workday has generated against each and every field. So which we can say reference ID or integration ID. So we use that ID to further run the process. So that's an example of integration field attributes. So as you can see, um, the configurations defines the set of fields will be included in the personal data section for the output file. So now let's say HCM, uh, we are actually taking a look of HCM connector, and these are the fields that are available. We will select the fields, which fields we want to use, and this is the thing that we were just discussing about the maximum length. So let's say if I have given uh, length of 10 for this specific field, but maybe an individual is having uh, name of 15 or 18 characters, so that can give me an error. So I need to make sure that I am giving uh, like I have defined the limit based on that. So that's a simple one. Again, there can be multiple fields, multiple attributes that we can pick and map. And then integration map is an integration map is an integration component that specifies how value in Workday map to values in an external system. For example, the core connector worker template provide integration maps for a variety of fields such as marital status, gender, hire reason, and worker type. Transaction log. So what is a transaction log? So transaction log basically it provides a record of business processes and events in Workday. So integrations can subscribe to specific transaction log events to capture the changes to employee data that are relevant to an external systems. Some connectors, including job posting, location, and competency, do not include a transaction log service, as the underlying Workday web service to not include it. So looking at the transaction log, simply it's a log. Same way we have, let's say, call log. So this transaction log is actually giving us a record of business processes and events in Workday. Now, the overview of integration. So what things we need to we have in the architecture of integration. In our initial slide, what we understood, we understand the architecture of Workday, and integration service was one part of it. Now over here we are actually understanding integration architecture. So while we are configuring integrations, we have different services that are running. Then we have attributes. So as we defined that there are different attributes that we need to pick based on our requirement, and then we need to map those attributes. Mapping means that we are saying, okay, so this is Workday and this is our second system. Now this field is going to map with this field. So let's say over here I'm calling it a name, over here I might be calling it general name or maybe first name. So I know I want to basically map it. I want to tell the system that when I am, for example, using this word, so this field should in Workday should go to this field in the external system and should pick the value and should map it with each other. So let's say I am mapping the word solution with document transformation. So the name in Workday is solution and the name in the other system is document transformation. I am actually defining that I am mapping these two fields. And why I'm doing it? Because system should know, because there are hundreds of field in this system, hundreds of field in this system. I want to build that connection. Okay, so this solution actually means document transformation. So this field should go and get and put the data to this field. So the solution field in Workday would, the data should get picked from this field in Workday and should actually be pushed into this one. So this is how we do the mapping. And again, transaction log is actually, you can say, the audit. It's actually giving us a record of what process is being executed. If there is any error, then we can uh, go through that error, understand that what's causing that error, what we need to fix, which is like the limit of or the field length is one of those examples. So we have to define these details and then push the data. We have to define the rules. So Workday defines the rules and the output. Workday builds the integration using the SOAP API. Then we uh, then we transforming the document. Integration system transform the output of the Workday connector and then delivers transformed output to endpoint. What API is? API is simply, you can say, it's API actually stands for application programming interface. It's a connection between you can say computers or between different computer programs. It actually offers a service to other piece of software. So uh, it's actually building the integration. So it's using that that programming interface Workday is defining the rule and then pushing it to the integration system. Integration system is actually transforming that data and then delivering it to the endpoint. So definition of the rules and output, uh, pushing to integration system. Integration system is transforming that data and then pushing that data to or delivering that data. And that's what we are doing in integration. And regardless of which integration type we are using, the purpose is to actually pick the data and transform it and deliver it in the format that is understandable uh, by the endpoint or by the external system. That external system could be any tool. That external system could be um, any service. So, for example, email, for example, as I mentioned, it could be any specific location. It could be any Google app. It could be any RSS feed, depending on what our requirement is and what our endpoint is. But the overall process has these three steps: getting the data, transforming it, and delivering it. Integrations using document transformations are built in the tenant. Using the integration business process, uh, you can retrieve and deliver documents. Additionally, you can string multiple integration systems together. There is a way to eliminate the limitation of EIB to only have one data source, one transformation, and one delivery point without having to use Studio. You do need to be familiar with XML technologies like XSLT and XPath, etc. If you are uh, if you are processing large sets of data using multiple web service calls, need complex logging and error processing, you may still want to consider using Studio. So, we over here are talking about um, Workday Studio. We are not going to we are not going to cover or learn about Workday Studio in a specific, but Workday Studio is basically a, an environment that permits Workday customers and third parties to create um, like complex mixes. It's an integration tool and it requires certain level of programming. But over here, our focus is not that. We are only focusing right now on connectors, those pre-built connectors, and how we can configure those connectors. So document transformation is an integration system template that enables you to attach an integration service attachment or XSLT style sheet to the integration. Using a document transformation template, you can attach an XSL file that contains Workday specific transformation attributes that define the transformation and format of the integration file. So uh, what it's telling us that document transformation, uh, like using this template, we can actually attach a file that would uh, contain specific transformation attributes, and that would define that how the data would be transformed and in which format that data should be. So the format of the integration file. So document transformation, I'm just going to add in this after this slide. So document transformation can include custom integration maps and attributes. If more than 3 transformation are required, post connector output, use Workday Studio. So uh, document transformation can include custom integration maps and attributes. We already talked about both of these things. But if there are multiple transformation that we need uh, at one point, means we are trying to have multiple services running at the same time, and we need multiple transformations. So in that case, we need to use Workday Studio. So that's all we are going to end over here. The idea is that I'll just quickly recap why we are using integrations. What's the purpose? The purpose is that to link, to actually build a link between two applications. Uh, there are generally two types of integrations, inbound and outbound. Um EIB is a form of integration. Um, there can be inbound EIBs, there can be outbound EIBs as well. Inbound integration and outbound integration. Inbound integration when the target is Workday, which means that we need to we need to get the data from an external system to Workday. Outbound integration is when the source is Workday. We have to extract the data from Workday. That can be done. The first way to do it is custom report. The second way of doing it is core connectors. And then there are, when we are talking about connectors, then there are some pre-built connectors that Workday has delivered, and that are with different systems. So what we need to do in order to use those connectors, we have to configure, we have to map different attributes and different fields, and then we can use these integrations or these connectors. There are three major steps, or the three components of integration. We have to get the data from a specific source, regardless of whether it's an inbound or outbound. So we get the data, we transform it, and we deliver it. So these are the three main components of integration. Regardless of which type of integration we are using, these are the three components that are common.